I really miss going to coffee shops. Sitting down at the table with a hot cup and talking to people and working with all that noise and the distraction around me. For 15 years now, coffee shops have been the place where I go to work, where I read and I study, where I meet people, have meetings with people, where I meet people in the community and pastors in the community. That's kind of where I work and what I do. Most of the people in the church even know that if they're by one of the coffee shops in town, they can stop in. They'll probably find me there. And a lot of times you do, and we chat for a while, and I love it. I love being in coffee shops, and I really miss going. In fact, in the first week of the shutdown, I probably spent more time working in my office than I had in the last 20 years of ministry combined. I miss coffee shops so much, like so much. One of the first coffee shops that I really fell in love with was in Kansas City, and it was called Espresso Dell'Anatra, means espresso of the duck. And we were new to the area, and going there allowed for me to make new friendships and to build community, and I did. And it was just this awesome place. It was one of my favorite places in the entire world. I also learned a lot about coffee going to Espresso Dell'Anatra, a lot about coffee. No matter where I went at the time, I would always order a large hazelnut vanilla latte. It's French vanilla. Hazelnut and vanilla makes French vanilla latte. And when I started going to Cafe Dell'Anatra, that's what I'd order every day. It was a 20-ounce drink. So it has 2 shots of espresso, which is 2 ounces of espresso. It would have about an ounce of syrup, which is sugar and flavoring, and then it would have 17 ounces of milk in the 20 ounces. It was really more of flavored milk than it was of coffee. Now, there was a barista there that I'd come to be really good friends with, and his name was Mike. And Mike was short, and he had this long beard, and he was just a thick guy. He looked like he should be a blacksmith or making toys for Santa, but he was actually, and is actually, one of the most amazing baristas I've ever met in my life. And one day, after I'd been there for a little while, Mike came over to my table, and he had this small cup, and he put it down on the table. He said, "Here, try this." And then he sat back, and he stroked his beard. It was free, so I tried it. What he had put on my table was a traditional Italian cappuccino. It's a drink of thirds. 2 ounces of espresso, 2 ounces of froth milk, 2 ounces of steamed milk. Just a simple drink. And it was amazing. It was so good. It tasted so much stronger than my latte, and I could taste the espresso and all of the flavor inside of it. And then Mike told me, plus, it's not quite as girly of a drink as your French vanilla latte that you get every day. So I started drinking Italian cappuccinos every day. That was my drink. I loved it. It was so good. Until a couple months later, Mike came back to my table with even a smaller cup. I mean, a little cup. And he put it down on the table. He said, "Here, try this." And he smiled and he stroked his beard and weighed it. It was free. And I trusted Mike, so I did. I tried it. What he had brought to the table was a proper quad macchiato. That's 4 shots of espresso with this little dab of frothed milk on top. 4 ounces of espresso and less than a teaspoon of milk foam. It's pretty close to just drinking pure espresso. It was just amazing. It was so good. It was all of the espresso and all of that flavor that they put into it, and I loved it. Macchiato means to mark in Italian. So what they do with that little bit of milk is they're just putting just a little bit there to cut some of that bitterness out of the espresso, but leave all of the rest of the flavor so you don't get distracted by the milk. I was hooked. I started drinking quad macchiatos every day. And if I meet a good barista now, a barista that I really trust and I think that they know what they're doing and how to pull a good shot of espresso, that's still my favorite drink. I'd rather have that than anything else. In just a matter of months, I went from mainly milk to mainly espresso. I went from 20 ounces to 4 ounces in a drink, and it was so much better. But, I thought if Mike had, the very first time that I came in, when I ordered my hazelnut vanilla latte, if Mike had said, no, you don't want that, here, drink these 4 shots of espresso instead, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to stomach it. I probably would have never gone back there again. See, it takes time to develop a taste. It takes time to learn that less really is a whole lot more. And Mike was an excellent teacher and an excellent evangelist for the coffee bean. Sometimes some things just take a while to develop and make sense. Jesus says this thing in Matthew chapter 6 that for a long time to me was like drinking straight espresso before I was ready. This one line used to be so bitter to me. I wanted to spit it out of my mouth. I didn't want to think about it. It made my skin crawl. It made my stomach hurt because I wasn't ready for this one line in Matthew chapter 6. It says this, 6:25 says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life," or "don't be anxious about it," some of the other translations say. Hated that line. I thought I'd never be able to do that. That's just too high of a standard. And the problem is we read that passage like that is the only thing that it says on the entire page. We don't read it in context. It's not the whole story. The story doesn't go, if you're going to go and hang out at coffee shops, well, then you need to start drinking espresso, just straight espresso right away. Nobody does that. And the story isn't, if you want to live the way that Jesus wants you to live, well, then you have to stop worrying right away either. But see, that didn't make sense to me for a long time. Jesus is a good teacher, so we need to give him the time to help us develop and to take us to the places that he has for us to go. And it is a process. We need to live in that process, but we need to be intentional and active in that process. If we go and look at the beginning of Matthew 6, it starts with hazelnut vanilla lattes. That's where he begins teaching us. And he says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. If you do, you'll have no reward from your Father in heaven." Jesus implies one thing here, and then he teaches one thing here. He says, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of other people just for them to see you. He implies we should be living rightly, that we should be actually good people. We need to be doing the right things. But then he teaches us, he makes it very clear, but don't do the right things for the sake of other people seeing you and looking at you and thinking, wow, that guy's real great. That's not the point. We have to do the right things for the right reasons. He says you should be generous. He goes to the next passage and says you should be generous in giving to charity and helping people who need help. But don't do it so people will see you and think, wow, that guy's real generous, or that person really is a good person. Do it because people need help. Do it because God has given you the things that he's given you so that you'll be a blessing to other people, not for you to hoard them to yourselves. Do the right things for the right reasons. And then he moves to the next little passage in Matthew chapter 6, and he says, when you pray, you should pray, he's telling you. He says you need to actually do it to get close to God, to come into and live in his divine presence. It's not enough just to do good things for people that need help. And that's a problem. There's a lot of people in the church, there's a lot of people in Christianity who think all I have to do is be a good person and do nice things for people. And that's what God wants from me. But God doesn't just want you to be a good person and do good things. He wants to know you. And he wants you to know him. And that's what prayer is all about. You getting closer to him. So when you take the time to pray, which you should, Jesus says, make it about him. Don't make it so people think that you're real spiritual. Don't make it so it's some type of therapy that you think that you've checked another thing off your list. No, when you pray, make it about him. And don't do it so that you can win spiritual arguments and authority and leadership with people in the church. You know, when they come and they say, yeah, well, I prayed about it and God said we should do this or that. No, it's about being close to him, knowing him, being intimate in this relationship that we have with the divine and coming under those wings of his divine presence. That's what prayer allows us to do. The next passage right after the prayer says you should fast. Your life of doing good things for other people and being in a right relationship with God should stretch you. It needs to stretch you. If you're not being stretched, well, then we're not doing the right things and probably not doing the things we are doing for the right reasons. It requires some level of self-denial. It requires some willful sacrifice of personal comfort So we remember that this whole thing, it isn't about us. It's about him, and it's about people out there. It's about loving God with all that we have and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And that's why we should fast and we should be sacrificial in the way that we live. Do the right things for the right reasons, not to look spiritual or righteousness, but actually to be right with him and be right with the people around us. People try to fake this. They try to fake this all the time. And they've been trying to fake it for years, actually. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have been talking about this 2,000 years ago. It's a problem, and it's a problem that needs addressed. People just keep trying to fake it, but it doesn't work. It never works. Doing the right things out of the wrong heart only makes us and the people around us and the world around us a worse place. We've got to do the right things for the right reasons. Doing things for your own sake instead of doing them because they're right comes out of selfishness, and it comes out of greed, and it comes out of self-worship, and it sucks the life and the goodness out of the world around us. It might look like holiness and Christianity from a distance, but it's really just 2 ounces of espresso in an ocean of milk. You can't find Jesus in that, and nobody else can either. You're still just drinking flavored milk. You haven't grown. That's why he says, do the right things for the right reasons. Then we can get to Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. When Jesus comes to the table and he puts an Italian cappuccino down and he says, here, try this, it's free. And then he strokes his beard and he waits. We should pick that cup up and go to the next thing. We should grow in our taste and our understanding and our experience of what is good, because it's good. But too often people refuse to ever pick that cup up when we get to verse 19. Because we just like the flavored milk too much. We just don't want to give up the flavored milk. Verse 19 says this: do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. He says, for where your treasure is, your heart is also. It's a hard cup for some people to pick up. He pushes right to the core of the issue. He comes right to our heart. You start with doing the right things for the right reasons, but then we have to look at your heart in all things. Not just what you do, but in what you think and what you feel, what you want, what you desire. He comes right to our heart. What's really important to you? What gives you your identity? Where does your security come from? Is it all about the milk, the self-interested things that are easily palatable? Or is it Jesus? Is your treasure your bank account, your job title, the things that you have, your appearance, your relationships, the influence you have over other people? Where's your treasure at? Where is your heart at? Jesus brings this cup, and that's the question that he's asking. He's telling us that he should be our treasure, that he should have our heart. So if the paychecks stop coming and the job title disappears and there's a pandemic and the economy and everything that's normal stops being normal, well, then you don't lose your identity and you don't lose your security, because you've chosen to put all of those things in him and not on other stuff. And he never changes. He never leaves us. He never collapses. Paul wrote this in Romans chapter 8, verse 38. He says, for I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth or anything else in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that's in Jesus Christ our Lord. Where is our treasure? Where is our heart? Is it in all the other stuff, or is it in him? You see, if we keep our eyes fixed on him, Jesus says in this passage, we will stay full of light and life. But if we look to anything else, it's going to go dark eventually. Verse 24 says, no one can serve 2 masters. Either you hate one and love the other. Either you be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money or wealth or whatever else your treasure is. You can't serve God and something else. It's either him or the other thing. You have to pick, and too many people try to fake it, and it never works. Too many people think that somehow they can be the exception to this absolute truth. You cannot serve two masters. And they try to do the God thing and their job and their reputation and their stuff and their money, and it never works. And because they do that, their marriages and their children and their grandchildren and their community, their legacy, their heritage, it suffers. They try to pour the 20 ounces of milk into that cappuccino cup, and it never works. They just make a mess. Everything in life becomes a mess. It never works. They aren't fooling anyone. Your heart can only belong to one master. And there's one master out there who makes you feel good for a little while, but then it falls apart when everything goes bad. And then there's another master who gives you a more and abundant and overflowing life of blessing and purpose and peace. Why is it such a hard choice? Why is it such a hard choice for us? Jesus put the cup down on the table. He says, here, try this. It's free. And it's better than what you've been drinking. It's so much better than what you've been drinking. Why wouldn't you take it? Once you do, and once you make Jesus the master of your heart, you make him your real treasure in your life. You're generous and drawing closer to him every day in prayer and devotion. You're doing it all for the right reasons. You're making it about him and other people, not about yourselves. Your marriage gets better. Your kids and your grandkids have a real shot at real life, at really living. And the communities that we live in like this, they become better because of us. We have that ability. And that's when Jesus shows up a third time. That's when he comes back to our table a third time with an even smaller cup. He shows up with 4 shots and a mark on top. It's the pure stuff, the quad macchiato made by the master. It's just amazing. He puts it down on the table and he says, here, try this. It's free. He brings it to us, he gives it to us, and he just waits and he strokes his beard and he smiles because he knows we are going to love it. When he's your master and the treasure and you trust him, there is no hesitation to take that cup. Because you know that he knows what you need the most when you've made him the master of your identity and the master of your security. And you try it and it is good. And that's when we get to verse 25. He says, therefore I tell you to not worry about your life. He's telling us not to do something here. He's telling us to just realize something there. He says, therefore. He starts this with therefore. Therefore, since, because you're doing the right things for the right reasons, and because you've made him the master and the treasure of your heart, and because you've come to establish all of your identity and all of your security on him, because you know you can't have two masters, you just don't need to worry about your life anymore. You don't need to be anxious anymore because you trust him. And I know it sounds crazy, but faith is crazy, and that's what this is. It's faith. From the outside, it doesn't make any sense. And people that have never tasted this, that have never tried it, have never gotten through the lattes and the cappuccinos to it, they don't understand, and they have no idea how you could possibly stomach it. And it just sounds crazy to them. But listen to me, it's amazing. It really is amazing. And sometimes we forget how good it really is until we get another taste. And we want another taste and another taste and another taste. And we could just drink it all day. We wish we could just drink it all day. To have that faith and that trust, that confidence and that security. I miss going to coffee shops so much right now. I really do. But I know who my master is. And I know where my identity and my security comes from. And I know that one day all of this is going to be over. And we're not going to be stuck inside anymore. And we're going to be able to go back out. And the coffee shop's going to be open. And it's going to be waiting. And I know that I'm going to be able to go in and they have a seat just for me at that table. And when I get there, I get to see all the people that I miss, that I've missed so much. And I know on that day, My master, that master barista, is going to put down the drink that I love the most, and he's going to call my name, and he says, here. And I'm going to drink it, and it's going to be great, and I'll never have to leave again. I know that that day is coming, and I want it so badly. It's what he offers to all of us. To have that confidence and that security that no matter what's going on in the world around us, no matter how much our hearts hurt or long, he knows what we want. He knows what we love. He knows what we need. He knows what's the best. Are you ready for that day? Are you ready? Are you thirsty for something better out of life? Is a seat waiting for you when they open that place up? Have you been faking it? Are you doing the right things for the right reasons, or has it been all about you? Is your treasure in stuff that doesn't last, or is it in Jesus? For real, where's your identity? Where's your security come from? Is it coming from him, or is it coming from something else? What are you drinking in life? What are you settling for? Because I know he's got something better. And he's just waiting, and it's free. The cup is there for you to take. It's so good, and it's free. It's always been free. Are you ready? Are you ready? What could you possibly be waiting for?